Good afternoon, y'all. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hi, welcome. If you're returning, it's great to see you. As you can see, I'm sitting in a different spot today. I'm actually in what was supposed to be Franklyn's nursery. My old office. It will become my office again. It will look different because I'm going to actually make it my own and not just my husband's storage locker. My husband and I spent the weekend selling Franklyn's things that we had. We had a lot. I took a majority of it on Thursday, and my husband took the bigger items like the crib and the bassinets on Saturday. So this room feels pretty empty without his things. I did keep his lamp and these pictures here, these Winnie the Pooh pictures that I got from Amazon, and I framed them. The frames are from Target. I worked in here a little bit this weekend, just trying to clean it up a little bit. Obviously I have some of my office supplies here. It's hard to sit in this room knowing it was supposed to be his and it's not. I'm gonna try and tell the story from the beginning, so that you guys really understand everything that happened. So some of you may remember that I made a video about low fetal fraction at, I think it was 11 weeks or like right in there. I did my NIPT testing, which is the like Natera Labs testing where they test for trisomy 13, 18, and I think Down syndrome, and you get the gender in that. The first time ours came back low fetal fraction of 1.1, I think. And then the second time, a week after I did the first test, I did it again, and it came back as low fetal fraction 1.3, I believe. And I've heard mixed things. I've heard that Natera is not the greatest lab. I've heard that meant immediately that there was something wrong with the baby. And that's the stance that my primary OBGYN took at that time, was that there was something wrong with the baby. Obviously, we now know that that's true, but we didn't know what. I had a scan at 13 weeks, and that told us that the baby was measuring 2 weeks behind, and at that time they told us it was a girl, but we held that information because it was so early. And they told us that because they thought it was a girl, and they thought that the baby was measuring small, that the baby had something called Turner syndrome. Again, we sat on that information because we didn't know. And so I saw high risk for the first time, maternal fetal medicine, at 15 weeks. And that doctor at that time told us that the baby was fine. Baby was only measuring 4 days behind. Baby looked perfect. There was a couple of bright markers on the heart, but other than that, they could watch that with ultrasound. Baby was perfectly fine. And they scheduled me 4 weeks out for my 19-week anatomy scan. So because my husband and I, at that point, believed everything was fine, I went to that 19-week scan by myself. And when I tell you that I was blindsided, that's not even an understatement. They really came at me. They let me know that there looked like there was too much fluid in the brain, hydrocephalus, that he had hydrocephalus. So again, we didn't know if it was boy or girl at the time. That there were heart defects, which we knew about. Like we expected on. My husband also had heart defects. They told us that there was something going on with the lungs. They said it looked like there was a tumor in his lungs that filled up his lungs. And like I said, I'm using gender, but the doctors did not use gender specific terms. And there was some other stuff kind of going on. I didn't understand how a baby could possibly have a tumor in their lungs. And they told me they couldn't see much, that the baby was measuring about a month small at that point, and that I had to come back in 2 weeks for another scan. Was it 2 weeks? I think it was 2 weeks. So I went back in 2 weeks. Baby had some growth. They could see a little bit more, but they were still unsure. So that was 21 weeks at that point. And then I had to go back at 24 weeks because then they pushed it 3 weeks. They still couldn't see much, but at that 24-week scan, they confirmed that they believed it to be a girl. And so, but they still kept just like giving me kind of like the runaround, and I was learning more things from like my other doctor. Like she was telling me that their brain development was off and that there was something wrong with other organs, and that I was just getting mixed information between the two doctors' offices. Nobody could see much, and nobody knew what was going on. At that 24-week scan, she told me that she leaned more towards whatever it was fatal, because the baby's stomach was filling with fluid. Prior to that appointment, they had never mentioned that the baby's tummy had a bunch of fluid in it. So that caught me off guard. And that I didn't know what to do. You know, I'm seeing a specialist. I'm seeing my doctor who is berating me for not having an abortion. But nobody could tell me, was it fatal? Was it not fatal? What was my diagnosis? What was this baby's outcome? Nobody knew. But I was getting two very different reactions from different offices. I literally stood in my doctor's office for 35 minutes being just berated and chewed out, it felt like. Well, I sat there and just cried, tears streaming down my face. And she didn't even offer me a tissue. And she's been my doctor since 2016. She delivered my son. She was there through my miscarriage. And she just didn't have any compassion with us at that moment. And I didn't know what to do. So I'm part of a mom's group on Facebook that a girlfriend had recommended to me. And this mom's group is amazing. These mamas are so knowledgeable and helpful and considerate, and they don't judge you, and they don't have a bunch of drama. Like, they are truly the best group of women I've ever met. Well, I haven't met them, but you know what I mean. So I reached out in there, and I said, hey guys, like, here's the situation. We haven't talked about this publicly, but here's where we're at. I don't know what to do. And a couple of them told me to message them privately, but I messaged one of them, and she told me, you need to go above all of these doctors. You need to go away from them. You need to go to a hospital that does fetal testing. I didn't even know that was a thing. And so I started researching. I was calling hospitals in San Antonio. I was trying to figure out where could I go to get some help. And I found one fetal place in Houston. So I called them to make sure that they would take on my case. They said they would, and I called high risk and I requested a referral. High risk wanted me to come in one more time before that appointment. And I think that was my 24-week scan, was right before I went to Houston. And so I had already requested the referral at that point. But I called them and I asked for the referral. They said, well, you need to come in for your next appointment and we'll give you the referral. And I said, fine, but I want the referral today. I'm not waiting until Thursday. And it was Monday. The referral they sent actually ended up being a different fetal place. But they were amazing. I went to the fetal center through Children's Memorial Hospital, Children's Herman Memorial or something in Houston. I don't think I could have gotten through this without them, because the resources that they had were tremendous. My nurse called me that same day. As soon as she got the referral, she called me. We spent an hour on the phone talking about my situation. She set up my schedule for all of my testing, went over everything with me, let me know what doctors I would be seeing, what testing I would have done, when I was having it done. They gave me links to hospitals for a discount, and I cashed out all of our savings. And a week after, we went to Houston. I'm so fortunate that we got to go there. So we got there on Wednesday night. Thursday morning, I woke up and I had a 2-hour fetal MRI. This is the week of 4th of July. So I had a 2-hour fetal MRI. I am claustrophobic. That was a very hard MRI for me. The gentleman that did it let me know that there were, I think he said there was like 13 places or 11. I can't remember the number. There's like 11 places or 13 places or something in there nationwide that are approved to do these fetal MRIs. He was one of, I can't remember if it was 2 or 3 technicians in Houston that was authorized to do them. But he was amazing. He made sure that he got a foam pad for the table. He got a pillow for under my knees. He got me a cover, because I told him, I said, well, I brought a blindfold, but I just realized it had metal on it. So he got me like a little like blanket or a sheet thing, like a pillowcase to cover my eyes. And he, explained everything to me. It was amazing. I appreciate him so much. But I made it through the MRI and I left. I went back to the hotel. I got my son and my husband, and we spent a rainy afternoon at the Natural Science Museum in Houston and the butterfly exhibit. Then we went out to dinner and we went to Tiny's Milk and Cookies for dessert. Because I really was trying to make it feel like a family trip and not just mommy's going for testing. And then the next morning, I went in and I was there bright and early at 8:30, and I was there until just after 3 p.m. I was supposed to get a lunch break. I did not get a lunch break. There was a lot of testing. I had a fetal echocardiogram done, and I had a fetal detailed sonogram done. And then they actually ended up doing like 3 sonograms. They did 2 different doctors did my sonogram, and then they did a vaginal ultrasound as well, because they were trying to see more detail. And we went into a conference room, and I was there by myself. My husband was at the hotel with our son. And I went into a conference room, and they came in and started telling me the findings. They went over the MRI findings and then the findings from them. So essentially, Franklyn had a rare condition. And when I say rare, I mean less than 100 babies have this condition. It was called CHAOS, congenital high airway obstruction syndrome. So basically what that meant was his lungs did not connect to his breathing, like his airways. And there's 2 different types of blockages. There's a webbed blockage that they can go in and cut while you're still pregnant, and then there's a solid blockage. His was solid. His lungs were, the reason they looked so solid and like they had a tumor is because they were so overexpanded from the fluid that they looked solid, like a mass. And so his lungs were severely affected by this condition. It's also why he had fluid in his abdomen. He had 2 heart defects. He had a hole in his heart, and then there was something about the blood flow was wrong in his heart. So it would have required surgery post-delivery. And he also had small kidneys that were filled with cysts, like fluid-filled cysts. His brain development, his brain was slightly small, and the left side was underdeveloped compared to his right. Obviously he had the heart and lung defects, and then he had some physical deformities with his facial structure. They had thought his feet were deformed, but his feet actually looked fine to me after delivery, but his hands were deformed a little bit. And upon discussion with the pediatric cardiologist, the doctors there in their office, there was other, I talked to a couple, and the genetic counselor, we had decided that we would do comfort care at birth. He was never going to be able to recover physically from the things that he had, and it was strongly recommended to me that I do an amniocentesis to rule out genetics over chromosomes, because they wanted to make sure nothing could hurt Hunter or affect Hunter in the future. And so, because I had been there all day long and I was so tired and I was overwhelmed and emotionally drained from all the news, I told them I would call high risk on Monday and I would schedule the amnio. So I left the office and I went home, and not home, I went back to the hotel. I got Hunter and BJ up because they were still napping at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and we went to the Houston Zoo for an hour. I mean, I paid $40 or something to go to the zoo for an hour, but I didn't care. I just needed a mental break. And kind of through this as I was filling my husband in. The next day we went to Johnson Space Center, packed up the car, and then came home. That Monday, the CAPS team from the fetal center called me. The CAPS team is a specialized team that helps you deal with basically like your final wishes, your delivery plan, but also Franklyn's final care plan, his hospice plan. So they called me. I had asked them, they had offered to do a heartbeat bear for me, and I had asked them about it, and then they realized that they had never recorded the heartbeat. So my CAPS team contact sent me a bear and a bunny. I actually have the bear here, and I got the bear and the bunny the day of my amnio. And so I did the amnio a week after I got home. And the next day I went in and I had the bear and the bunny heartbeats recorded. The bear's heartbeat isn't as strong as the bunny's. I gave Hunter the bunny. That's the one that he picked. I had almost held off and not done these, but my doctor's office, I had found a new doctor. After being berated at my prior OBGYN's appointments, I found a new doctor, and my first appointment with her was 2 weeks after I got back from Houston, or like a week and a half, or so. No, it was like 2 weeks. And I almost put off recording the heartbeats because I thought that everything would be okay. But I didn't, because the assistant encouraged me to come in. So I came in, and I got them recorded. I was there on my lunch break, so I was a little late getting back. But I didn't know that that was the last time I would hear his heartbeat live. And this was the day after the amnio. And that was the day I met my new doctor. So I went in for my next checkup the following Tuesday, so a week later, so about 2 weeks after I got back from Houston. And my doctor and I were talking, and I had done how much the appointment, like how much delivery would be and all of this. Like I had done all those conversations, and I let them know, we were looking at a fatal outcome. Houston had told me that it would be better for Franklyn to pass in utero because he wouldn't suffer. They actually told me it was a boy, and I kind of laughed. I was like, really? Because they keep saying it's a girl, and he's like, no, I'm pretty sure it's a boy. And boys are mistaken as a girl more often than not. And so I went in and we were talking, and she had me hop up on the table so she could start my scan. And I noticed he wasn't moving. And she couldn't find his heartbeat, and she's like, his heart should be right there. Like, I can see there's like a little flicker, like it should be right there. And I'm like, he's not moving. And so she kept trying and she couldn't find it. And so she went and got one of the sonographers. And the sonographer came in and she scanned and she couldn't find the heartbeat either. And so they looked at me and they're like, we're so sorry, but he's like, the baby's gone. And so I was devastated. Like, I knew, we already knew what was coming. And it was like every day up to that, it was like grieving all over again. It was like your grieving started all over again. And I called my husband and I was just sobbing, and I'm like, the baby's gone. And he's like, what? And I'm like, his heart stopped. He's gone. Well, I didn't say he, I thought it was a girl at the time. So I was like, Chloe's gone, because we thought it was, like I said, a girl, which we named her Chloe. And he's like, I'll meet you at home. And so I calmed down and I checked out and I left. And I sat in my car and just sobbed hysterically. And then I called my dad. And I was like, Daddy, the baby's gone. Then I was like, the heart stopped today. And I'm supposed to deliver the baby. I don't know when, but I'm going to find out. Like, because I wanted to talk to my husband and figure out what we were supposed to do. And so I got home and we just laid there and held each other and cried. And I called my doctor's office back and I said, because I was having pain, and I was like, we need to schedule this as soon as possible. I was told I could wait up to 2 weeks, but I couldn't wait 2 weeks. I had already told my work I wasn't coming back at that point for a while. And so we scheduled for Thursday. And I told my dad on the phone, I was like, this just isn't fair. Like, this is my second angel baby. Like, I don't understand why it's so hard for people to have kids that want kids. And, you know, like, no baby should have to go through this. Like, no baby deserves to die. And he was like, you're right, it's not fair. And he was crying and I was crying. We were just a mess. And he texted me later and he's like, do you want me to come now or later? And I texted him back and I was like, now. And he did. My dad was on a flight at 5 o'clock the next morning and he was here by 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And I am so grateful for that. I'm so grateful that they were here. So I got scheduled for Thursday at 2 in the afternoon was my C-section time. It was July 27th. And I went in and we told him we thought it was a girl, but you know, Houston had said it might be a boy, so we didn't know. And the nurse was so sweet. She was very attentive. Like, she was in there as much as she could be, and was just really sweet to me. And I went in for my C-section. My parents were there. My in-laws were there. It was a rough C-section. Like, I felt a lot, like, physically. So much so that I was tensing up, and they actually had to give me some anxiety meds to get me to relax because I was so wound up. But he was born at 3 p.m. And my doctor leaned over the curtain. She's like, do you want to know what it is? And I was like, yeah. She's like, it's a boy. I was like, of course it is. And so I felt so bad. I called him a girl and named him a girl and had girl clothes in his closet. And so they cleaned him up. We'd already talked to her about how we wanted the whole process to go. So they brought him over to me and laid him on my chest, and I just kept kissing his little head and telling him I was so sorry I called him a girl. I named him a girl, and that he was not with me anymore. Like, you know it's not your fault, but you can't help but blame yourself. And so, we hadn't intended on keeping him with us for a long period of time, but things just kind of happened in labor and delivery that day, and he ended up being with us for 4 hours. We did have some newborn pictures taken of him. I'm not going to obviously share those because those are pretty graphic to look at. And I have them here in his box in here. So I have all that. And then, after about 4 hours, the nurse came in and I asked her to take him because he was cold and he was starting to smell because he wasn't under any warming things. I had asked for a comfort cot, which is supposed to help regulate his temperature, and they never brought it. So I asked her to take him, but my parents held him, my husband held him, and I'm so grateful that my parents loved on him and held him so that he knew he was loved. I mean, I know he knows he was loved, but so they took him. I got moved to a private room at I was in a private room prior to that, but like a really big private room tucked way deep into the hospital, away from the mamas and the babies at like 10 o'clock that night. And that was when they started letting me get up a little bit, supervised. And then the next day, my doctor told me I could go home if I promised her a couple of things, and I did all of them before I left the hospital. So I was allowed to go home the very next day. Thank God. The nurses were great. They all hugged on me and loved me and took care of me, and like, they were amazing. I really couldn't ask for anything more. They gave me a care package. They gave me a box for Franklyn. So this is his little memory box. I think I showed a picture of it. But they did his little footprint. His little feet prints here. You can't really see them. They're so faint. These are his newborn pictures, but I have they have little hearts that they took pictures of with him. And like they took pictures of him with all these little things, little booties, his little hat that he was wearing, his little card, and his little footprints. His footprints are so cute. I actually want to try and get these tattooed somewhere. He was 1 pound and he was 11.5 inches long, but they gave me just like the sweetest little things. They gave me a little outfit. He never wore this, but they gave me a little outfit for him and a little diaper. Again, he didn't wear any of those things. He did wear the little hat though. I didn't realize it actually had his blood on it, but you know, a little teddy bear. So they gave me a bunch of little things. I have my hospital bracelet in here. So they gave me a bunch of little things for him to remember him by. I should probably take this card off because it's a grief support group that I should probably look into. It's really thoughtful that they did all that. And so I really appreciate that they did. And this is basically like his little box. So all of his sonograms are in here. Cards and things that we've gotten from family and friends are in here. That kind of thing. I just have them kind of tucked in here to keep them safe. But like I said, I got to go home the next day. So heartbeat. I didn't mean to squeeze that, sorry. I got to go home the next day, and we didn't tell Hunter until Saturday morning when it was just me and my husband, and Hunter doesn't understand, so he's, asking questions, and he keeps asking where his baby is, and he's asking me if he can have a sister now. When I delivered Franklin, I only had one fallopian tube because of my previous loss. I lost a fallopian tube at that point, so I only had one tube left, and I actually had my doctor take it when I delivered. I still have a uterus, I still have ovaries, but I had her take the fallopian tube. That way we didn't have any surprises. It took us 2 years to conceive Franklin, and then we lost it. So we're still dealing with the funeral home. They still haven't cremated him. It's been 3.5 weeks. I think his death certificate, last I heard, should have been signed last week again. So I'm waiting for them to call me about all that. I can just tell you for a fact that funeral homes do not make this process any easier. It's really drug on, this whole process. And then my family went home after a week. I got COVID from the hospital. My parents also got it. Hunter got COVID 2 weeks later from school. So go figure, lucky us. So we're all recovering now. Hunter's back at school this week. He started back today, but it's just been a slow process. I actually got a phone call 2 weeks after Franklin passed that told me his amnio results. My high-risk doctor had asked her office to hold them because she wanted to call me herself. And she called me to let me know that, yet again, Franklin was a very rare baby. He had very rare things. And so he had a chromosome defect called triploidy. Triploidy is where he has an entirely third set of chromosomes. So the writing was on the wall from the time that he was conceived that he wouldn't make it. I think there's only been one baby that's ever lived to 7 months with triploidy, but it's a fatal outcome for babies too. And so they told me, they're like, you could have another baby and the baby would be fine. And I was like, no, we're done. We're done. 3 pregnancies, 2 angels, and Hunter. I'm good. So I'm glad that I know it's something that I did wrong, but it doesn't make it any easier to not have my baby. So that's hard, but I wanted to share this story with you guys. So if you're going through something, or you know somebody that's got some pregnancy issues, tell them to find a fetal center of some sort that does testing. That I know they're not nationwide. I know they're nationwide, but I know there's so few of them. But they are worth their weight in gold. I hope that more continue to open. Because of my experience, I actually know people that are having to go to the same center I went to. And so Franklin has already helped people that in our own life know where to go for help. And I'm grateful for that. But I wish he was here and not in heaven. We just keep explaining to Hunter every day. When he asks, we try and be open with him. We've let him help us clear things out. We've let him keep what he wants. He has Franklin's dresser and his Winnie the Pooh stuffed animal and his blankets. He also has, and one of the blankets was the blanket we took to the hospital with Franklin when he was born. And then he currently has all of Franklin's toys, even though I keep explaining to Hunter they're baby toys. And if I could donate them to his school for the babies, and he keeps telling me no, they're his toys. So we're working on that. I think it's cute that he's so like set on the toys, but hopefully we'll be able to donate those to other babies here pretty soon. But I want to give Hunter time, and I want him to be okay with it. I don't want to rush his grieving, you know. But if you have any questions, if you're going through something and you don't know what to do, or you just need to talk, let me know. My email's always down below. You can message me on Instagram. You can message me on my email. You can leave a comment if you care to do so publicly. You don't have to, of course. We chose to keep our story obviously private for a long time. And I've actually told you guys more than I've told people in our own life. We haven't shared this with everybody. We've shared it with close family and friends. But I hope that gives you guys some insight as to kind of how life has been for the last 4 months. For us, it's been hard, but I start grief counseling tomorrow, and we'll figure this out. So yeah, thank you guys so much for coming on this journey with me and listening to me. I'll just keep doing my best, filming the content as I can, and trying to keep up with uploads, but I don't stress about it. If I can do it, I can do it. If I can't, I can't. This is just a fun side hobby. It's not really, I don't make money on YouTube. But I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and I will talk to you guys soon. Bye, y'all.